We'll call this meeting of the Carson City Planning Commission to order on Wednesday, January 28th, 2015 at 5 o'clock p.m. Ms. Clerk, may we have a determination of the quorum, please?
Chairperson Wendell.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Eswin. Commissioner Castro.
Here.
Commissioner Dami. Commissioner Owens.
Here.
Commissioner Sather.
Here.
Commissioner Steele.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. Sir?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Settler. Regarding the subject matter of public comments, please be advised that the public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is not relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission and Growth Management Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. And I repeat that, on any item that is not included on this agenda. Any member of the public wish to come forward and provide any comments or any testimony? Let it be noted for the record that no member of the public has indicated they're interested in providing any testimony at this time. Gentlemen, you all have a copy of the minutes before you of the previous meeting, and I presume that you have read it. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes of the previous meeting? Okay. There not being any, may I have a motion regarding the minutes of the previous meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. I'll second.
A motion made by Walt Owens to accept the minutes as prepared, and seconded by Mr. Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays? Motion carried. Modification of the agenda. Mr. Plemmel.
No, we have no recommended modifications to the agenda. Take the items in order.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Well, I would note that we would like to open up, I'll just note for the record, we have some items on, some multiple items that pertain to the same properties. We'll open up for discussion those multiple items together for discussion and public comment, 2A and B, and 3A and B.
All right, sir. Thank you. Would any member of the commission wish to explain any contact with an applicant or to the public or with the Republic regarding any item on the agenda of the business of the commission today? Yes, sir. Mr. Sadler.
The item involving Carson City Hospital. I work for Mid-Valley Surgical Supply and sell medical equipment and supplies to the clinics and doctors in the area. Carson City only buys under contracts from people contracted with them, which we do not have, and I do not do business with them, but I don't know if that would be a problem or not.
Do you personally see any potential conflict?
I don't think there's one. I was going to ask just to be safe.
Joe Ward from the DA's office.
Yes, sir.
As long as there's no pecuniary interest that you receive, that you could receive from this item, that would be any different than anyone else in the general public would receive, you have no conflict.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other disclosure by any of the commission members? Let it be noted for the record, there are no further disclosures. Public hearing matters. F-1, excuse me, SUP-14-158, to consider request from Roy L. Street, property owner, Roy L. Street, to allow a medical marijuana cultivation facility on property zoned general industrial located at 5835 Sheep Drive, APN 008-523-14. Ms. Pensky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Susan Dorr-Pansky, Planning Manager. This is a request for a medical marijuana cultivation facility in an existing building located on Sheep Drive. The facility is located about halfway up Sheep Drive, as shown on the aerial that I have on the screen here on the north side. A couple of photos of the existing facility. This is looking towards the north, the northwest, and then towards the northeast from outside of their fence. As I mentioned, this facility is about 3,888 square feet. It's located on a lot that's 1.5 acres in size approximately. This is the site plan that has been provided by the applicant showing what the existing and also proposed improvements are. You'll see the existing building showing in yellow areas where they propose to mount security lighting, and in green where they propose to mount security cameras. I'll note while the site plan is up here that you'll see that at the entrances there are paved areas on the site plan. However, the majority of the lot is not paved. The parking spaces around the site are paved, and then the parking or the entrances from each driveway are also paved. One of the conditions of approval for this application would be that the applicant pave the parking area, any area that would be used as parking. That's a condition from engineering. And then in addition to that, while the site plan is up again, outside of the fence, there's a landscape area that's about 30 feet wide along Sheep Drive. The very frontage of that is landscaped. Staff is recommending that it be landscaped all the way back to the fence as a condition of approval for this facility. Floor plans of the site basically include what we would typically see and what we have been seeing with the cultivation facilities that have come through so far. They have a sprouting room, large growing room areas, offices, storage space, and then some cloning rooms. Relatively typical. It's an adaptation of the existing building as they have today. The water usage on the facility is proposed to be about 428 gallons a day. That's well below the threshold of growth management, which is 7,500 gallons a day. Due to the size of the facility, the applicant doesn't expect that there will be a significant amount of traffic, at most approximately 45 trips a day for employees, and potentially an additional 12 trips per week for product delivery into and out of the facility. So not particularly significant for what you would typically see in a general industrial use. The security plan I showed you on the site plan basically shows surveillance cameras on the exterior. The applicant also intends to utilize the fence surrounding the property as well. It's a 6-foot chain link fence with a 1-foot barbed wire on top of it. They'll be installing security lighting and also a third-party security system. And then they would be required to meet the same requirements under the local license as they would under the state as it relates to odors being detected from the surrounding properties. The state prohibits that, and we would prohibit that as well. We've recommended a condition of approval. I'm not going to go through, as I have in the past, I'm not going to go through each one of the development standards point by point, but we have found that they meet the requirements of the development standards for medical marijuana facilities. We have not received any comments for or against this project. We did have a phone call with some questions about the project, but they were satisfied with the answers that they received. We're recommending approval with the conditions outlined in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pansky. Any commission members have any questions at this time?
Yes.
Mr. Castro.
For clarification, this commission has seen one cultivation facility request thus far,
Correct.
and it was decided that this community would allow 4. Is that my understanding?
There is no limit on cultivation.
There is no limit on
facilities in Carson City.
cultivation. And then there is, for clarification, dispensary, there is cultivation, and there is production. Does production fall in the same category as cultivation with regards to no limit?
The only medical marijuana facility that has a limit in Carson City is the dispensary. There are no limits on any of the other facilities.
Thank you.
Any other commission member have questions? Ms. Pansky? There being none, we'll open this to the public, or to the applicant, excuse me. Would the applicant please come forward, identify yourself for the record, sir, and if you'll just write your name, full name on the roster there. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Wilson.
Could I have you write your name first?
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Derek Wilson with Rubicon Design Group on behalf of the applicant. I'm tempted to say that this is an extremely simple reuse of an industrial site. However, I realize this is a newly legal land use, and therefore it's a little outside the bounds of everyone's experience. So I'd be happy to elaborate as needed. If people have specific questions, I'd rather just have you ask them than me try to anticipate exactly what those might be. I would say in general, we meet the locational criteria. Those criteria are fairly strict, and it really wasn't too difficult to meet them on this site. This use is likely to have lower impacts than a lot of other allowed uses in the general industrial category. Lower traffic, essentially no noise production, very little visible activity at all. And importantly, there'll be no public use of the site. There'll be no unregulated access. There'll be no customers showing up. There'll basically be zero public traffic. Again, if people have specific questions, I'll be happy to go into more detail.
I have one question, first of all.
Okay.
Have you read the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, I have.
Do you agree with those, fully agree with those?
Yes.
All right, sir. Any commission member have any questions at all of the applicant at this time? Mr. Owens?
Are you aware that there is a facility right across the street that tends to physically and mentally handicapped patients?
To be honest, no, I did not know that there was I guess a healthcare facility across the street. We looked pretty vigorously at the locational criteria, and that was not one of the items that they mentioned. So no, that didn't show up on my research.
Yeah, because you can see them walking around the neighborhood with the handicapped people. Okay.
Mr. Steele?
Yeah, your third-party security, is that going to be like an on-site security, or is that going to be just external cameras that can be monitored off-site, or how is that, the third party going to be handled?
Cameras monitored off-site. Yeah, there'll be continuous management through a private company. Yeah.
And is the private company going to be local, or is it going to be like, like ADT that's managed in Texas, or how?
I would understand that they would have a local office, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Mr. Sadler? Okay. Are there any further questions of the applicant?
Great, thank you.
All right, sir, thank you.
My name is Roger Rackow.
Let me just ask you a question, sir. Are you representing the applicant in this matter?
No, I'm representing myself.
Okay,
I'm a property owner over there.
All right, sir. Let me just say for the record that we are now opening this up to the public, and you're welcome to provide any testimony for or against this particular application. Go ahead and proceed,
Right.
sir.
I want to go against this application.
All right, sir.
You
Would
want
you
me
be
to sign
so?
my name in here?
Yes, sir. If you sign
Okay.
that, you place your name on a roster there.
All right.
Could you repeat it as well? I missed it, I'm sorry. Could you repeat your name?
Roger Raycow.
R-A-K-O-W. Okay.
All right, sir.
All right. I own the property there on, down the street a little ways on behind. I don't have an address because I don't have a building on it. It's 3003 Deer Run Road. And I don't like marijuana. I never smoked it. I think it's dirty. and I can't stand the smell of it. I've been around it before. I don't want to drive by these places smelling marijuana coming out the vents. I don't think that's proper at all. And I never smoked it before. So I'm totally against any growth over there at all of marijuana or any cultivation. It's not, I don't think it's good at all. I think it's dirty stuff. And I'm here to object to the whole matter.
All right, sir.
So anyway, I have to be driving by these places, and I do business around there, you know. And I'm definitely not allergic to it, but I just can't smell it. It makes me sick when I smell it growing. I've been around people that grow it and smoke it, you know, all the time. And I don't know how many people here smoke it, but probably a bunch. And medical marijuana is nothing but a big party anyway. They give it to anybody that wants it. You know, I could go down to the doctor and get it right now, and I don't even need it, you know. A lot of people get it just to be getting it and smoking it, and kids around their kids, and their kids, pretty soon their kids are smoking it, you know, too. So that's my objection.
All right, sir. Any commission members have any questions of Mr. Ricca?
Just a comment. Thank you for coming forward today, sir. Just for clarification, though, this is for a cultivation facility, not a dispensary.
Right.
So,
Right.
kind of like a farm that milks cows, but they don't sell the milk there.
Right.
So there won't be any of that going on there.
Right, right.
Okay.
But it still smells.
No, I understand.
It smells strong. Comes up through the vents and everything else, you know. And I don't know, it might not even be worth it to have it out there because you have to monitor it so it don't slip through the cracks and everything else. And I guess the city's going to monitor it. If they put it in, who's going to pay for that, you know?
Well, please understand that any of these facilities have to meet statutory requirements, and they're inspected and monitored by the state of Nevada.
Right, right.
Okay. Mr. Sadler.
And also, sir, it's in the regs, one of the things they have to meet is there can be no odor coming out of the building at all, so.
Yeah, well, I've heard that before, too. You know, I know what you're saying, but it don't always work that way, you know?
All right, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would any other member of the public wish to step forward and provide any comments for or against this application? Mr. Wilson, do you want to make any comments or rebuttal regarding the odor or presumed odor from this facility?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that Mr. Ricco has strong feelings about this, and I think that's somewhat natural. Like I said, it's a new use, and it may take a while for people to get comfortable with it, but planning staff takes this seriously, and they asked me quite a few questions about the ventilation system, and I was pleased to find out that Mr. Street had already initiated discussion with an HVAC contractor, a local company, and they're already designing the system. So they knew ahead of time this would be an issue. So I anticipate that there'll be no problems, and if there is, the permit will disappear.
All right, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other member of the public a desire to come forward and offer any comments regarding this matter? I'll bring it back to the commission then. Commission members for discussion, comment. Any further questions of Ms. Pansky or Mr. Plemmel? Are you prepared to make a motion regarding this matter?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Sadler.
I move to approve SUP-14-158, a special use permit request from Roy L. Street, property owner Roy L. Street, DBA Street Properties, to allow a medical marijuana cultivation facility on property zone general industrial located at 5835 Sheep Drive, APN 008-523-14, based on the findings and subject to the condition of approval contained in the staff report.
We have a motion for approval by Mr. Sadler. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Second by Mr. Steele. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays? One nay. Let me note it on the record, the motion does carry. There's one nay, by Mr. Walt Owens. Thank you, gentlemen. Do you want to state for the record your objection for the record?
I just don't feel that that should be in the vicinity of a handicap care facility. I just personally don't feel that a grow facility should be in the same, especially that close to a handicap care facility.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda will consist of two items. First of all, F-2A, SUP-14-159, to consider request from Nevada Organics LLC, property owner Dondi Wallach LLC, to allow a medical marijuana cultivation facility on property zone general industrial located at 3130 North Deer Run Road, APN 008-541-76. And F-2B, SUP-14-160, to consider request from Nevada Organics LLC, property owner Dandy Wallach LLC, to allow a medical marijuana production facility on property zone general industrial located at 3130 North Deer Run Road, APN 008-541-76. Ms. Pensky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you noted, we're going to hear these two items together. This is for a medical marijuana cultivation facility, which the commission has heard applications on before, but also a medical marijuana production facility, and this is the first application of that type that's been heard in front of the Planning Commission. They're both proposed to be in the same building located at 3130 Deer Run Road. It's located on the corner of Deer Run and Bighorn Drive, as shown in the aerial that I have up here on the screen right now. Just a few pictures of the existing facility. This is looking to the west from Deer Run, to the northeast from Bighorn. Let's see. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's to the northwest from Deer Run again. Northeast from Bighorn, and then off to the east from the access driveway behind the facility. This is a site plan for the proposed facility. They are proposing to operate in the 14,000 square foot building that they have. They will do 12,334 square feet are proposed for the medical marijuana cultivation, and approximately 1,700 square feet roughly will be used for the production facilities. So just for clarification for the record, the differences between cultivation and production. So cultivation is strictly the growing of the plant, as you're well aware from the applications we've already heard. Production, however, involves several different things. It could be anywhere from extraction of the oils from the plant to infusion of those oils into various products and anywhere in between that. So they're proposing to co-locate their facility here at this location. Production typically doesn't take the same amount of square footage as cultivation does. Obviously, they need a lot more room to grow their plants versus doing the actual process where they're extracting and infusing. So I'm going to go through the floor plans of each, and you can see kind of how they all operate within the facility. This is an overall of the facility. Phase one is this hatched area in the middle that I'm pointing out here, and that's phase one of the cultivation facility. Phase two of the cultivation facility is on the left. So that would be as they grow over time, they would expand their cultivation. And then this area here, in kind of the crosshatch on the right-hand side, is their production facility. First, the floor plan of phase one for the cultivation facility includes, as again you're used to seeing, vegetation room, flowering rooms, a break area, a dry room, offices and storage. Their expansion then would be to add flowering rooms and vegetation rooms on the left side of the building, or the west side. And then the production facility, which would include a loading area and an extraction area, a packaging area, an office, a break area for the employees, restroom, and then a dish area. Well, that was it on that one. So a couple things to note. The building and the site are in pretty good condition, so staff hasn't really recommended a lot in the way of conditions of approval for the site itself. One thing I'll note is that the parking is not well striped, it's worn over time, and this is, we see this a lot in reuse of buildings that have been vacant for a while. So we have recommended a condition where they would need to restripe the building parking lot areas. And everything else is really related to specific items that would be addressed at the building permit stage. They've proposed a relatively significant security plan. It includes, as the other one did, third-party alarm system, high-quality infrared security cameras, security camera video monitoring from inside the building, restricted employee access, and so on and so forth. Again, because of the size of the facility and the nature of the production and the cultivation, they don't expect there to be a significant amount of traffic to and from the facility. Generally, 3 to 5 trips per week for deliveries, plus daily trips for up to 5 employees for the cultivation or the production, and I believe it's around double that for the cultivation, so around 15 or so total. Again, as it has been brought up and the concerns had been voiced, they are required both by the city and the state to ensure that the odors are not leaking outside of the building. If it's detected, then they will be not only in violation of their special use permit, but also their state permit. So they are very committed to making sure that they don't have any odor leakage from inside the building, and they've discussed with us the air filtration system that they propose to use. It's actually a custom-made system that they have developed and used in their facilities in Arizona. They do meet all the criteria for the medical marijuana development standards, as I've outlined in the staff report. I'll note that we did receive a letter in opposition as late information today that I provided to each of you at the beginning of the meeting, and it's also available at the back for the public, basically stating from some adjacent property owners that they oppose the application. That concludes my presentation. I can answer questions if you have them. The applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Ms. Pansky. Mr. Sauter, do you have a question, Ms. Pansky?
Yes, please. Under the production, in the discussion on page 5, it mentions that the special use permit for the dispensary is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission on February 25th. Is this going to be at the same location?
No, actually, the special use permit that they have submitted is for their location on Clearview Drive on the other side of town.
It's another, okay. It's not, that's what I just wanted to clarify.
Right, and I'll note for the record that this particular applicant has received a provisional certificate from the state for their production, their cultivation, and their dispensary. The production and cultivation facilities you're going to hear from here on out will also have received their provisional certificates, but we do not have information that we can release at this time on the second dispensary in Carson. So you'll be hearing that next month.
I just wanted to clarify that it won't be at the same, it won't be at the same location. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Ms. Pansky, by any of the commission members? All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pansky. We'll have the applicant forward, please, and please identify yourself for the record. And if you'll just go ahead and sign the record with your full name, we'd appreciate it. Let me initiate the process by asking you a question. I believe I saw you in the back of the room, but for the record, did you have an opportunity to hear the statements and testimony provided by Ms. Pansky, the city planner?
I did indeed. And
you're aware of the conditions of approval that are in your application packet?
I do believe so.
And you agree with all the conditions of approval?
Absolutely. And just for the record, my name is Rebecca Gasca. I'm here with Pistol and Stigma on behalf of the applicant, Nevada Organics.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, in addition to the testimony provided by Ms. Pansky, would you like to provide any testimony this time regarding this application?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to be here with you this evening. I did provide a draft of a short document for the commission and left copies for members of the public and, of course, to staff, just to give you an idea of who the applicant is, because they weren't unfortunately able to make it this evening. But Nevada Organics was the very first the same group, essentially, that were licensed in Nevada. Their facility was recognized as a best, kind of a best practices facility, and many of the standards that are actually in Nevada law were modeled after their facility in Arizona. And some of the requirements that they have placed on themselves in Arizona are not required by law in Arizona, but now have been incorporated here. So really, they are a best practice, leading company in the industry. I'll note that, yes, the facility's air filtration system is practically one of a kind, developed again as a best practice standard, so odor mitigation will be absolutely no problem. Of course, we take safety and security incredibly seriously, so we've maximized our approach on the seed to sale program, and Arizona Organics did come in first place, ranked in Carson City, both for all of their applications here for cultivation, production, and dispensary. They also came in first place in Washoe County as well. So they'll have 2 dispensaries in northern Nevada, pending, of course, your approval of their dispensary location. And I will note, just the map on this document has a little star, so you can see where the dispensary is proposed to be located down there. Absolutely. If there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer. Oh, and I will note that of course, there was a late letter that came in this morning. We're more than happy to sit down with that property owner. Of course, we'll be complying with all of the signage requirements of the state. So practically speaking, nobody's going to even know who is operating in our building, nor the cultivation facility whose application you just heard, who's actually right around the corner from where this location is proposed to be.
All right, ma'am. Any commission members have any questions of the applicant? Mr. Owens.
Are they aware of the handicap facility right down the street?
Thank you for the question. We actually have, we looked at a number of locations around the city, of course, and of course noted who our neighbors were and looked at a number of other locations. We ultimately decided on this building because of the safety and security. And while we did note that this facility was there, we of course did our monitoring and compliance checks. There's nothing in state law that prohibits proximate location to those kind of facilities. And of course, nor near proximate location to any federal, facilities or anything of that nature. So we're happy to work with the facility and make sure that safety and standards are followed, of course. And actually, we had a couple of notes here at the bottom of this document about our work with our neighbors, and we take that to heart. We've had the same issue, and I'll note, actually, the location in Arizona where we work, we've actually seen an increase in safety and security. One of the neighbors actually had a break-in. It was like an antique store, but our cameras actually helped identify who the suspect was. So I think you'll actually find that the area will become safer as a result, and if there's anything that we can do to help ensure that, then we'll be there for you for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have a question?
And just for the record, normal signage on these type of facilities, as in the past, are very low-key. They're not.
Minimal.
There's no banners and signs saying what's going on.
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
Thank you.
Any other commission members? Mr. Owens.
There's also residences in the area. Have they contacted the residence, which is directly across the street?
So thank you, Commissioner, for the question. Of course, this location complies with the zoning requirements and, of course, all of the requirements of the city for land use purposes. But I will note that as a part of our community plan that we put into the state, we will be doing outreach to the local building owners, of course, beyond what the city has already done according to your own compliances, but we'd like to have one-on-one relationships so that people understand our level of safety and protocol. So we'll certainly be reaching out in order to establish those kind of relationships.
So that means you haven't contacted the homeowners that are in the area?
So far, what's happened is the required notification for the city's purposes, but as we continue our build-out, we'll be hiring locally. We'll be, very interested in establishing those kind of community connections, but we have not made phone calls to people outside of the, the area of notification.
I'm only commenting, actually, I know there are 2 physical homes within the 300 to 1,000 feet of that facility. Those are the only ones I'm really worried about.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll definitely be mindful of that.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
Well, no.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Would any member of the public have a desire to come forward and identify and address this application? And if you'd be so kind as to, Mr. Rakow first, looks like he's right up there. Again, would you identify yourself for the record, sir? Just
I only want objectors.
okay. If you just identify yourself for the record, sir.
You want me to sign that again?
No, sir.
I'm Roger Rakow, property owner at 3003 Deer Run Road.
Thank you.
And this is even getting closer here. I've had people break in my yard over there through my 6-foot fence, and I got an 8-foot fence, and these druggies are breaking in there all the time, stealing my stuff at night. And I can't seem to keep them out of there. They're stealing my radiators and whatever they can get their hands on, But anyway, I didn't know how much you guys have went into this and understands this marijuana here, just for the sake of maybe a bunch of autism kids or something, Autism's on the rise.
Okay, could I just intervene for just a moment? Rather than go into something regarding the subject of marijuana itself and statistics, if it doesn't apply to this specific environment and this particular case.
Well, I think it does, because you're talking about marijuana here and growing it. The buildings don't mean nothing and the planning don't mean nothing. You're talking about marijuana here, And I got a little short story here I want to read you. Is that okay?
I prefer that you don't.
Oh, well, why?
Primarily because we've got a lot of, we have other applications, and because of time constraints.
Well, it's going to take about a half a minute.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, it says here, this is done by, research is done by Foundation for a Drug-Free World, 1626 North Wilcox Avenue, number 1297, Los Angeles, California, 90028 USA. And it says here, marijuana changes the structure of sperm cells, deforming them. Thus, even small amounts of marijuana can cause temporary sterilization in men. Marijuana can upset a woman's menstrual cycle. And this is a research that's been done. I just read it to you, if you want to look into it more. I thought maybe you guys would have at least investigated this marijuana thing before, you're setting up here making decisions on it.
A lot of these subject matters have already been addressed in the past.
Oh,
Yes.
they have?
Yes,
So
sir.
you know all about it then?
Having
Okay.
worked in law enforcement for 30 years, I'm very familiar with a lot of it.
You are? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's good. That's all I wanted to say, because it's not good for everybody.
Right.
And anybody can get a hold of it. The more marijuana we got, the more availability it is, to anybody. And they can break in there and steal it. They got ways of doing it,
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Rakow. Next. Again.
My name is Jeff Furman.
Jeff Furman?
Jeff Furman. It's Fuhrman.
Yes, sir.
Your pen's dying.
Mr. Furman.
I own Rub You Right Trucking, doing business as DBA Nevada Organics. I bought Nevada Organics Incorporated in 2000, right here in Carson City. I have a landscape and Topsoil Supply Company. My Carson City business license, current, up to standard. We contacted Nevada Organics LLC in November to let them know we were here, what the issue was, and there's a conflict of trademark with our two companies. At this point, they're not permitted yet in the state or in this county. I've been contacted by 4 vendors, Reno Hydroponics being one of them, and I've also been contacted by quote-unquote 2, I guess they call them patients at this point. With the conflict of the names that close together, mine being ICS and theirs being IX, I'm sorry, there's no way to differentiate between the 2 companies in this town. I have no problem with what they're doing, how they're going to do it, make their money, whatever. I do have a problem with them taking my name. Like I said, their Deer Run facility, unfortunately, where they've got it set up and where they're placing it, if you Google search Nevada Organics, the way Secretary of State does it, my house is my business office and my address. I live at 2450 Pinion Hills Road. And if you're familiar with the area, I am right at the other end of the road. Can be greatly misconstrued on where you are going. I have a serious problem with that, and I see major liability and litigation issues if I have patients showing up at my house.
How far is your residence located from the proposed?
About 4.5 miles straight down the road.
And they're going to show up at your house rather than their location?
I've seen it happen, and it's been my experience already. I've had Google searches of my own company. I've had people show up at my residence and call me going, excuse me, where's your topsoil company at? I'm in a residential neighborhood. Well, that's because you showed up at my office, not at the yard.
Nice. Okay.
Other than that, that is my only objection. I would prefer the application be denied until the name issue is resolved.
Okay. And your name again, sir, for the business?
It's Rub You Right Trucking, doing business as Nevada Organics.
Nevada Organics?
Yes,
All
and
right,
I do have the, if you would like to see, I do have the current, I pulled it off the wall to bring it to you, to show it to you. It's the business license, it's right here.
Anyone want to see it?
I don't believe him. I have no
Okay,
reason
that's
not.
fine. We don't need to see it. But I just have one question. First of all, any of the commission members have any questions of Mr. Furman?
Have you discussed anything with the applicant about this problem?
We notified them through, I hired an attorney that notified the company of the situation, and to this point, we have 0 response that I know of, that I'm aware of. My attorney hasn't said anything.
When is the first and last time you contacted that company?
He notified them in November. That's the last contact that we had. We filed registration with the feds for federal trademark to trademark the name so we can alleviate this problem in the future.
All right. Mr. Owens?
Just a comment, as far as the Secretary of State is concerned, as far as naming businesses, you can have Nevada Organics Incorporated, Nevada Organics LLC, Nevada Organics L.C., and they're all different entities as far as the Secretary of State is concerned, and they can license them all.
I'm finding this out. Yes, we know this.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Mr. Sadler? Mr. Steele? Okay. All right, Mr. Verman, thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that has a desire to come forward and address this application? There not being any, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward and to provide any further testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Identify yourself for the record.
Rebecca Gaska, thank you, from Pistil and Stigma on behalf of
How do you pronounce your last name?
Gaska.
Gaska?
Gasca.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate the question and the opportunity as a follow-up. We believe that the issue of a name or trademark is certainly outside of the scope of what the Planning Commission is here to discuss today. This is simply a land use issue. I'm not an attorney, and I can't speak with any legal regard on behalf of the applicant with respect to the allegations that have been brought forward today. And so I ask that you be mindful of my position here on that, and that you move forward with the approval based on the strict proposal of the land use issue. And certainly, the applicant here will take responsibility as they deem fit, according to, of course, their legal representation as they work through whatever issues may need to be worked through.
All right, ma'am. Mr. Sadler, you have a question?
Just, is the dispensary going to be named under the same name?
Currently, thank you for the question. Currently, the applicant, Nevada Organics, which, by the way, comes from Arizona Organics, which is the name of the company there, they applied at the state under Nevada Organics LLC for all 3 of the licenses. What's interesting, actually, is the state actually has to approve any of the kind of ways in which the dispensaries are promoting themselves. So I couldn't, even if they were planning on that, we still have to go through approval process through the state, and so I kind of can't answer that, and I'm sorry for that.
That's good. No
Yeah.
problem. I just was curious as to whether it was going to. Thank you.
And of course, you're familiar with the fact that even though you use the name organics, all it needs is just a brief deviation to show the difference between the two as far as the Secretary of State's office is concerned.
Of course, and of course, we are registered with the Secretary of State.
Already? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right, and I would like to, well, I want to ask you one other question for the record, but you've thoroughly read the conditions of approval, and on behalf of the applicant, you agree with all those conditions?
Absolutely, indeed, yes, thank
All
you.
right, ma'am. I believe I've asked it before, but thank you for the confirmation.
Always good to be sure.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Plemmel.
I'd like, for the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I'd just like to address a couple points here just to help, I think, the public understand Planning Commission's role. Just to confirm what Rebecca just said, in terms of the name of the company, that's not within the purview of the Planning Commission, what you're doing. It's not a basis that you can make a denial on. You're looking at the land use decision. I'm not sure the appropriate legal venue for that, but it's not the Planning Commission. And as Rebecca said, you'd look at the land use issues. And secondly, just as the chair said, in response to earlier testimony, there has been a lot of discussion on this, and it's not that the Planning Commission is the experts on marijuana. However, the Planning Commission is not now deciding whether or not medical marijuana establishments are going to be allowed in Carson City. We did have the public hearings, we had the meetings. It has been decided within the framework of the code that they are. So we're not putting it on the Planning Commission tonight to decide whether or not, again, it goes back to the appropriateness of the location. So I just want to note that for the record and for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Plemmel. And I'm sure that assists the general public here regarding any further testimony. Have everybody stay on track.
Yes.
We'll bring this back to the commission. Are there any questions of Ms. Pansky or Mr. Plemmel regarding this application? There not being any, I'm prepared to receive a motion.
Just a quick question on the motion. Are we going to motion these separately, or are we motioning them together?
Together.
You'll need to do them separately.
You want to do them
Okay,
separately?
Yes,
so
yeah,
they-
because they actually, they are 2 completely separate special use permits, even though
So
they're
we'll
in the
take the
same.
cultivation, and then
Yes.
we'll motion also on the
Yes,
production.
yes, thank you.
All right, I'm ready.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
On agenda item F-2A, I move to approve SUP-14-159, a special use permit request from Nevada Organics LLC, property owner Dandini Wallach LLC, to allow a medical marijuana cultivation facility on property zone general industrial located at 3130 North Deer One Road, APN 008-541-76, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of the approval contained in the staff report.
We have a motion made by Mr. Steele for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Sadler. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays?
Nay.
One nay by Mr. Walt Owens. Would you wish to comment as to your objection?
Same objection. There are actually residences in the area, and there is the handicap training facility down the street.
All right, sir, thank you. Motion carried.
Ready for another?
Ready for the next motion.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve SUP-14-160, a special use permit request for Nevada Organics LLC, property owner Dandini Wallach LLC, to allow a medical marijuana production facility on property zone general industrial located at 3130 North Deer Run Road, APN 008-541-76, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Sadler. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mr. Steele. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays?
Nay.
Please state your objection.
Once again, because of the proximity to the residences and the handicap facility down the block.
Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Next two items on the agenda, F-3A and F-3B. F-3A, ZMA-14-161, to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of a zoning map amendment to change the zoning of property located at 1001 Mountain Street and 608 and 610 West Washington Streets, APNs 001-201-15, -16, 26, and -27, from public community to multifamily apartment. And F-3B, SUP-14-162, to consider a request from Carson Tahoe Hospital, property owner Carson Tahoe Hospital, to allow a congregate care housing / skilled nursing / memory care facility on property zone public community located at 1001 Mountain Street and 608 and 610 West Washington Street. APN 001-201-15-16-26-27. Ms. Pansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are two issues, actually there are three issues total related to this property on this agenda, but one of them will be heard by growth management, which is why we couldn't couple it together with these, since you have to adjourn and then reconvene as growth management. But this is a proposal for a congregate care facility that's located on the corner essentially of Mountain Street in West Washington, as I've shown on the parcel, on the aerial here on the screen. This is actually a relatively old aerial, and I apologize for that. These buildings in this parking lot do not currently exist on the property. Our GIS system is a little bit outdated on that piece, but this is a more updated aerial of what the site looks like as of 2013. You can see that everything has been cleared and the site is basically vacant at this point. Just a couple of photos from the street. This is looking to the east from Mountain Street on the property, looking to the north from Washington, to the north from their parking lot, actually, so you can kind of see the bulk of the vacant land from this photo. And then this is from the Minnesota Street side, looking back towards the southwest. So the first issue. Congregate care facilities are not allowed in the public community zoning district. This property is currently zoned public community. It was zoned that way for the medical facilities that used to exist on the property. However, it's not appropriate for congregate care. So the applicant is first and foremost proposing a a change in zoning from public community to multifamily apartment. And the reason for the change to multifamily apartment was actually based on direction from staff. Staff recommended multifamily apartment for the zoning because, one, a special use permit for a congregate care facility is allowed in that zone. And two, because multifamily apartment is more consistent with the with the land use designation, the master plan land use designation, which is mixed use residential in this area. If for some reason this special use permit for the congregate care facility did not move forward and the zoning were to be put in place, then multifamily apartment would be more appropriate than a commercial zone based on what staff had seen. Really, this property is not particularly useful as a commercial property that would also allow congregate care. It doesn't have great visibility, and it's in an area that is predominantly residences and medical offices. So that's the reason for the recommendation for multifamily. So the applicant took staff's recommendation, and that's what they had applied for. So that's the first part that you're being asked to approve tonight, or recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors. So this would essentially go from public community, as the slide shows here, to multifamily apartment on that property. The slide that I have up now is the site plan. Also, it incorporates some of the floor plan. This facility is about 85,000 square feet, I believe. Is that right? 85,000? 86,500 square feet total. It's one story in some of the parts of the building, but two story in others. As you had mentioned, Mr. Chair, in the introduction of this item, it's a memory care facility, a rehabilitation facility, and also an outpatient, a skilled nursing facility and outpatient rehabilitation facility, all combined into one. The memory care facility will occupy the two-story portion of the building, and then the others will occupy the one-story portion of the building. Just some facts on the facility itself. It will have 52 beds total for the memory care facility, 42 semi-private and 10 private. The skilled nursing facility will have 80 beds, 56 will be shared and 24 will be private, and then approximately 17,800 square feet will be the rehabilitation services facility. This basically shows what the building will look like on the site. It also shows the proposed landscaping. You'll note that the building is really pushed up to the north side of the site, with some landscaping in the south area, and there's some parking in the parking in the southeast that currently exists, that the applicant the only modification they're proposing is to modify the striping. Right now, they're strictly parallel spaces versus angled spaces that are being proposed. So the reason why I wanted to point out where the building is located on the site is because when the applicant came in to us for their major project review initially, the building was spread out more across the entire site. However, it was pointed out in that meeting that a large majority of the property is located in the AO flood zone. And the AO flood zone, for those that aren't aware, is an area where a 2-foot flood, in a 100-year flood event, it would be a 2-foot flood area. So in order to accommodate that, you need to be able to fill the property so that you can raise the building floor elevation up to 4 feet above what that flood is. So it definitely caused some challenges for the applicant, and they moved their building so they could get as much of it out of the floodplain as possible, but they still have some in it. Engineering has reviewed it, and they have recommended approval, but they are requiring that a CLOMAR F, which is a conditional letter of map revision through FEMA, based on fill of the site, be required with approval of this. And that condition has been put into the staff report as a recommended condition of approval. A couple of other things to note that are important on this site. The project will generate about, 19,280 gallons a day in water. We'll discuss that more in the growth management application. About 17,280 gallons of sewage. Engineering has preliminarily looked at the sewer lines in the area and believes that the system is adequate, but will require a sewer capacity analysis. The water as well, I believe they've looked at it and they believe that the water system is potentially adequate, possibly marginal. That's not something they could make a final determination on. They need the analysis first to do that, and that's also a recommended condition of approval. Traffic generation, because of the type of use, this being a congregate care facility, it doesn't really generate a lot of traffic. The example that was provided that staff agrees with is for a facility of this size that has 132 beds, the peak traffic trips, peak hour trips are between 22 and 29 hour, 22 and 29 hour trips. So it's relatively low. It doesn't even trigger a traffic study with the city. And engineering agrees that traffic and pedestrian facilities will not be adversely affected. The proposed use requires 79 parking spaces. The applicant is proposing 96, so they will have enough on site for that. And then before I move on to the slide that shows the elevations, I want to note that this portion of the property, the lower left that I'm pointing to on the screen right now, is in the historic district. Because that portion of the property is in the historic district, that portion of the property is subject to Historic Resources Commission review. However, I'll note that that's the only part of the property that's subject to it. They wouldn't have to have Historic Resources Commission approval for the entire site just because one piece is in. So they will have to go in front of Historic Resources to have their landscaping approved. And that would be, so that's a condition of approval that we have required of them in the staff report. Another issue that was discussed, there are quite a few trees on the site, currently very large cottonwoods in some cases. The applicant has tried to preserve them where possible, but in lots of cases, they're either in the building footprint or they're in poor condition. On our preliminary review, we've determined that the proposed removals are acceptable based on what we've seen. I'll note that the trees that exist in the portion that is in the historic district are proposed to remain. And that's typically important to those that reside in the historic district. So they are mindful of that. This slide that I have up now is the proposed elevation from the south side of the building where the entrance would be. It's kind of at the corner of the site, the interior corner. In the application, they have shown other sides of the building, but they don't have the articulation or any kind of architectural details. So this one was really the more appropriate one to show. We have, though, recommended a condition that all sides of the building receive architectural treatments and articulation so that we don't end up with a very nice looking front of the building, but sides that are completely plain. Especially given the nature of this site, because really it fronts so many streets, it would be important that it has that nice look from every side. On this, the zone change, we did receive via phone an opposition from a neighbor in the area. See if I can find it here.
This would be other than the other opposition that you have documented in your report?
It's the document, yeah, it's the opposition in the document. I was just gonna call that person's
Sorry,
name out if I could find it, but it's in the staff report. Yeah, what's the name? Yeah, Jim Meneth and his wife. I had a long conversation with them about the zone change. They are adamantly opposed to the zone change. They don't feel that multifamily apartment is appropriate in this area. They stated that they had purchased their house in 1964, and at that time the zoning was said to be office. They understood that it would that it still was office today, and they would like for it to stay office. On the the special use permit, we have not received specific comments opposed to that. However, we did receive an email in support of all three applications, the zone change, the special use permit, and the growth management application. The applicant is here to pick up on anything that I haven't addressed. And before I turn it over to him, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Sadler, you have a question, Ms. Pensky?
Just for clarification, within that block, except for on the John Street side, the east end of the property, the rest is the old hospital, and it's all medical and physical therapy and other physical, or buildings for medical. But out down on the John Street side, there is a couple businesses, I believe, there, and houses that are on that John Street side.
Yeah, so the majority of the block, and actually I can go back to that slide real quick so you can see. The majority of this block is residential office. So you have the old hospital to the north.
Right.
These are all, These are all medical offices here in this location. This is a medical office as well.
Right.
This is all single-family residential, and the specific objection is from this property here on the corner.
Well, actually, I'm
And-
thinking more on North Minnesota, right in there, isn't there? There are older homes, but most of them are businesses.
Yeah, so there's actually a combination of things going on there. There's multifamily there.
Yeah,
There
right.
is a daycare facility there,
right.
and there are residences over there. And then the medical offices actually are combined in as well. For example, this piece
Right.
that I'm pointing out right here is a medical office also.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions of the commissioners of Ms. Pensky? Mr. Castro?
Just, I know you can't be exact, but how many PCs to multifamily applications do you think the planning department has seen, let's say, just in the past 2 years?
None in the past 2 years.
None.
No.
And is there any other classification within zoning that this actual care facility could fall under other than multifamily?
Commercial. And that would start with neighborhood business, retail commercial, general commercial. Those types of zones would allow it as well. But again, staff selected or directed the applicant to select multifamily because it would be more in keeping with the master plan of mixed-use residential in this location.
My concern, coming from a city that outgrew itself, is PC to multifamily. Does that open a can of worms down the road? But this is a care facility which is being proposed, which I think makes it different. The Scorgesons, there's no address on them within the report. Do we have an actual physical address for them?
They actually did not provide them, and I'm glad that you mentioned their name. That's the applicant, or that's the member of the public that was in support. They said that they had they lived on Washington Street, but they did not provide the exact address.
So they did not provide an address, okay. And then if you go to your SUP 14-162, page 8, after number 5 in the summary, it says staff notes that trees on the site that fall within the historic district are proposed to remain, with the exception of a few that are in very poor health, according to the applicant's landscape architect. My concern is the landscape architect and the community development director, who's responsible for, I believe, trees and things of this such, are they on the same page?
So staff can act also as the director when appropriate, and under the review of this application, which I did, I determined that the removal of the trees that are being proposed is appropriate.
Okay, because I did an on-site walk around earlier today, and there was, well, one in particular, several magnificent, very old trees that exist at that property. And I think it would be highly, with respect to your knowledge, but that the community development director, who seems to be solely responsible for this, I don't know if Mr. Plimmel looks like he wants to intervene, but that concerns me.
Well, for those trees that are large that seem old aren't really as old as they look, because they're cottonwoods that grow very fast and are actually trees that we don't allow commercial development to plant these days because they're very invasive. They do cause problems with infrastructure around there. So they've caused the city problems where there's street trees, they've caused people. So we've generally allowed cottonwoods to be cut down throughout the city because of the problems that they cause to adjacent development and city infrastructure.
I'm not done, but you wanted to say something? Oh, okay.
When you're done, I just wanted to make another comment.
And then, okay, thank you for your explanation. And then, with regards to the 50 adjacent property owners, it was mailed on January 9th. Today's what, January 26th? What is the norm? I know in other cities there's 30, 45, 90 day in advance notices of a hearing with regards to something like this.
The requirement per state law is 10 days,
10
but we
days.
generally exceed that, which we did in this case as well.
Yes, you did, okay. And then, I know you're going to touch on it when we go to that, but I do want to be specific with regards to the amount of water that's going to be used. It's significant, and also to discuss the infrastructure. You mentioned that engineering has approved it, but in my review of your report, it does seem that there's going to be some significant infrastructure going on with regards to having to fix sewer lines and such. So if we could just discuss that more so when it comes to that point. Okay?
Sure.
So
And then-
sewer, just to clarify, sewer is not the subject of the growth management review, only the water and the quantity of the water that's going to be used. And the initial analysis of the sewer system has indicated that we will not have to do off-site improvements to accommodate this facility. There's a potential that we will have to do something with water that will be determined in the analyses that will be provided, but the information that we have isn't going to be different between this application and the next, because those are conditions of approval and very detailed reports that will need to be provided with the building permit.
Okay. And my final is with the nice documentation that the applicant provided us. I'm just concerned and want to just learn more about on page 8, figure 8 and figure 9, the West and North Massing with regards to the design and how they look in these photos. I don't know if it wasn't just detailed or, they're not very appealing. So those are my questions and concerns that I brought forth to you after your wonderful and very extensive report.
So just to readdress that issue, we've had discussions with the applicant and are aware of the fact that every side except for the south side do not have architectural treatments and specific articulation. They haven't selected the exact placement of the windows and therefore did not feel that it was appropriate to show it on every side. However, we have a condition of approval that they will have to provide that. And it's also outlined in our design standards that they are required to do that
Okay,
as well.
thank you. You said keyword windows. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pansky. Mr. Sadler, you have a question, Ms. Pansky?
Just again to clarify, and because of my line of work, I've been up in that area a lot. What was existing there before was 3 very large medical office buildings, all 2-story. And when they were taken down, coming up towards Mountain Street, there were 4 or 5 large cottonwoods that had to be removed because they were starting to fall onto the building next door, and the fences were getting broken down. So some trees were recently removed there because they are very, not doing well, diseased, et cetera. So.
Yeah, to follow up on that, it's very common, in the historic district in particular and all throughout town where you see a lot of these large cottonwoods, it's common that they are being removed recently, and the reason is because they are pushing up the sidewalks, they're in poor health, they are in a lot of cases diseased and are in danger of falling. So we're seeing that a lot with the cottonwoods throughout the city. It's, unfortunate to see such large trees being removed, but when we have issues like that, it really doesn't leave the city a lot of choice.
Well, and over in that area, there has been a lot of damage to, whenever there's a good windstorm or whatever, normally there's several branches or whatever have come down off of many of those trees. So. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Ms. Pansky? If we could have the applicant approach the podium, please identify yourself for the record, and if you'd sign in, please.
Commissioners, Chris Baker, Manhard Consulting here on behalf of Carson City Hospital. I'm also joined tonight by April Copeland, who is with Prestige Care, Inc. This is actually an application that is a joint venture between the two entities. I have signed in. I'd like to thank Susan, obviously, for her very detailed explanation of the application, which allows me to just agree with the recommendation of approval and answer some questions. There's a few things that I would like to elaborate on. The first being Commissioner Castro's questions regarding the building massing. What we really did show is the interior floor plan was not final, 100% final. So we didn't want to propose window placements and ingress-egress locations that were not 100% accurate at that time. So what we showed was the scale and the size of the building and how it was going to relate, as far as roof lines and peaks and pitches to the surrounding uses. And obviously, with the condition of approval that we've agreed to, we're going to obviously expand on those as far as architectural treatments and articulation and windows and such. So, and in relation to the water usage, I know that's probably more of a growth management question at this point, but I think it's good to just bring it out. The reason the water usage is a little bit higher than the typical uses that were there before, which are medical office. The nature of these facilities being memory care, skilled nursing, and a rehab center, you have private and semi-private rooms, which obviously drive private and semi-private restrooms. So you end up getting showers, sinks, and toilet facilities that end up driving up a fixture unit count, which obviously is contributing to the water usage and the sewer usage. So that's obviously why those are a little bit high. So I'd make myself available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker. Are there any questions, Mr. Baker? Mr. Sadler?
Just out of curiosity, being owned by the hospital, are there any relationship, because in the old hospital next door is now wound care, rehab facility, eye care, and is there going to be any joint thing there or anything?
I think both entities really have determined a great need, a community need for a facility such as this that's really unprecedented for this community, and it's been seriously identified as a great need, especially the memory care. They will rely on each other, but I don't think in the relationship that you're talking. I think obviously joint venturing and being in close proximities to each other's facilities is a necessity, and that's why the location was chosen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Baker? I just have one question, and I believe you alluded to it, but the conditions of approval, you're familiar with those?
I am.
And you fully agree with those?
We do.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And those were in that SUP-14-162?
Yes.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We'll now open up for any public comment. Anyone wishing to come forward, providing any testimony for or against this application? If we please identify yourself for the record, sir, and if you would just go ahead and sign the roster.
My name is Casey Otto, C-S-E-Y-O-T-T-O.
How do you spell your last name, sir?
O-T-T-O. So I'm actually a property owner, 402 West Williams, 402 and a half, 404 and 406. I reside at 402. I'm actually in long-term care. I'm a business office manager for a long-term care facility. I don't have a problem with the long-term care facility. It's definitely something that's needed. Competition's great. That's what makes this country great. My personal problem is parking. If I can get parking. Can I get clarification on how many total beds we're going to be at the facility? And the reason I ask is at all the facilities that the company that I currently work for own, there's 3 in just this general area, 2 in Carson, 1 in Gardnerville. It usually runs a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every patient, there's 1 employee. So you can imagine, 100 beds, 100 employees. Now, granted, all employees aren't at the facility at the same time, but shift changes, things of that nature, the amount of parking, it tends to ramp up pretty good. One of our facilities is over on Ormsby. You can already tell from their parking that sometimes they don't have enough. And as for residents that are at the facility and those that are in rehab and things of that nature, generally there's 1, 2, 3 family members at a time that can be there. So my general concern is merely parking. In the area, it tends to get a little thick during the day, You throw another 100, 120 employees on top of that and their families, I just worry that there's not going to be enough parking for the facility, and it's going to have to spread out into the community itself.
Okay. Ms. Pensky?
Okay, so to clarify, 132 beds total. The requirement for parking per code is 76 spaces. They're providing 96.
And I understand the requirements, and I'm sure that they meet the requirements, and I have no problem with that. My simple interjection is working with the facilities and working there, and being the property owner, it's just not enough. So, like I said, I have no problem with the facility. I would just like to see maybe a little more parking, just so that we as residents are going to be able to park in front of our homes. Tenants can park in front of their homes and not have to worry about, you know, like Nevada Day every day. So.
You heard they are providing.
Yes, I understand.
More than is required.
I understand,
by
and
city
but I
ordinance.
still don't believe it's enough, in my personal opinion, and that's my only issue with it, and that's the only issue I have.
Any commissioners have any questions? Mr. Sadler?
Just if it is a suggestion or whatever, there still is an opportunity to get resident parking only or whatever in front of your facility.
And that's and I'm okay if that's going to be the option. Doesn't mean it's not going to.
I mean, that would be
It would be helpful, yeah. It doesn't mean it's going to contain it, but just a few more spaces, I think, would probably be more conducive to the size of the facility that it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for your
Any-
input.
Any other questions of the commissioners? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Are there any other members of the public that wish to come forward and address this application? Mr. Baker, do you wish to come forward and provide a rebuttal regarding the last comments regarding the subject of parking? You don't have to, I'm just asking you.
No, I don't really have too much to add. I think, like Mrs. Pansky pointed out, we are, 20 odd spots above the requirement. And I would like to point out that Prestige Care has 70-plus odd facilities of this nationwide, and I think they have a pretty good understanding of what is the ingress-egress counts of their required parking. And I know they tailored that specifically to some of these other sites and what they've seen over the years of experience. So I definitely appreciate the comments, and we'll do our best to address them in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Is there any other member of the public who wish to come forward and address this application? There not being any indication as such, we'll bring it back to the commission for any comments, questions, or discussion. Any further questions of the planning department?
Forgive me, maybe I missed it, but I just wanted to ask the planning department, why again the multifamily instead of the possibility of commercial you mentioned?
The master plan for this area of town is mixed-use residential. Having a and part of that use indicates that high-density residential is appropriate as a primary use. So rather than propose a commercial use that would be compatible as a secondary use and not necessarily as compatible with the surrounding offices and residential, staff recommended the proposal for multifamily.
Mr. Sadler, you have a question, Ms. Pensky?
And I believe you mentioned earlier, there is multifamily already on the block.
There are multifamily uses in the residential office zone on the Minnesota side, yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? There not being any,
I'll make a motion.
I'm prepared to receive a motion and take the first FS3A first.
APN, read the APN as well. On the first item, APN 001-201-15-16-26 and -27, recommend a motion. I move to recommend the Board of Supervisors approve of ZMA-14-161, a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from APN's 001-201-15-16-26 and 27 from public community to multifamily apartment on property located at 1001 Mountain Street, 608 and 610 West Washington Street, based on findings contained in the staff report.
I have a motion by Mr. Sadler to approve SU ZMA-14-161. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Owens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? It's unanimous. Motion carried.
And I'll note for the record that we will take this to the board for first reading at the February 19th meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Pansky. Next item.
I'll do it again.
All right, Mr. Sadler.
On SUP-14-162, I move to approve SUP-14-162, a special use permit request from Carson City Hospital to allow congregate care housing facility on property zoned public community located at 1001 Mountain Street and 608 and 610 West Washington Street, APNs 007-201-15-16-26 and 27, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval outlined in the staff report.
We have a motion for approval by Mr. Sadler. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays? It's unanimous. Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. For the record, we'll take a recess of the Planning Commission, and we'll open with the Growth Management Commission agenda.
Quorum's present.
Thank you, ma'am. F-4, GM-14-163, to consider request for a growth management review from Carson City Hospital, property owner Carson City Hospital, to allow a proposed congregate care facility, care housing, skilled nursing memory care facility, to use more than 7,500 gallons of water per day on property zoned public community PC located at 1001 Mountain Street and 608 and 610 West Washington Streets. APN 001-201-15-16-26 and -27. Ms. Pansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you noted in your introduction, this is a request for growth management review for the congregate care facility that we have just been discussing. Growth management review kicks in for any use that proposes to use more than 7,500 gallons a day in water. This particular facility is proposing to use 19,280 gallons per day. However, I'd like to give you a comparison that I outlined in the staff report that this is actually not, while it seems significantly larger than the 7,500 gallons a day that is the threshold for growth management, it's not a significant amount. By comparison, a hotel project that received approval in the last, I think, 5 or 10 years had an estimated usage of 83,000 gallons per day. I'm actually going to turn it over to Danny Rotter, the engineering manager, to talk about their approval of the project, but I believe that they agree that the usage is not significant enough to be of concern.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Danny Rotter, engineering manager from Public Works. For the record, if you'll remember back in July, and I'm going to provide this background for Commissioner Castro because he wasn't here, we talked about the regional system and the plans and where we were headed. And this 7,500 gallons a day dates back to the 90s, where growth in Carson City was projected to exceed our water and sewer capacities. And so what came out of that was we need to keep track of all these high water users. We need to make sure our water system's good, our sewer system's good. And so as a part of that discussion, I think, and we'll talk about it probably again in July, we're on the verge of probably even getting rid of this 7,500 gallons a day, or maybe even making it 50,000 gallons a day. we're under improvements currently. We already are getting water from Douglas that comes from Minden that goes into this zone called the 4880 zone, which if you think of Carson City is kind of like a big bathtub, we're right down in the middle of it. The water supply from Minden already goes to the 4880 zone. So from a supply side, we're already there. We're already supporting the zone. The 20,000 gallons a day is not a concern. As you'll see in the staff report, really our only main concern was fire flow. With the different size buildings and the possible sprinklers and uses and that sort of thing, that's really all that needs to be addressed with the water report down the road. Now, the east-west transmission main that we've talked about before that needs to get to the west side of town actually goes right down Washington Street. And so if you see the construction going on in Mills Park right now, that's a 24-inch water main that is ultimately going to come past the community center right where we're at, jog to Washington Street, head all the way Washington Street west. So there will already be a tie in this vicinity, which should probably help with the fire flow. If you look in the report, Tom Grundy said with coming improvements, we think it would be a no-brainer, but even at the existing, they should just confirm that the fire flow is adequate and move on. So we're completely comfortable with it. It's just that we've left this kind of catch-all in until we're really, really solid in our water supply. And so that's really why we're here.
All right, sir, thank you. Are there any questions, Ms. Pansky? Or?
So you're saying probably we may not have to address this in the next year or so. They may do away with that limit or minimum?
Correct. The memo, or Lee asks every year for an update to the growth management and how the ongoing efforts affect each division and department in the city. Right. The memo from Public Works continues to address water and sewer capacity. We felt this year, and Darren Schultz, the Public Works Director, and I, we're on the verge of saying we should probably just get rid of that. It's not that big of a deal anymore. So I think once we get a better handle on the west side and our thoughts there of what could come there, we would just either get rid of it altogether or make it 50,000 gallons a day or 100,000 gallons a day, something like that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Castro.
And so with regards to infrastructure, there's a report that needs to be done or a study. But other than that, how do you feel about that? And in keeping with, as even the mayor in his speech today, being smart with our infrastructure, how do you feel this facility will affect that at that location?
The water report will be the basis of is there enough pressure and is there enough flow to provide that site. There was already pretty big buildings there to begin with, so the infrastructure that's there is likely adequate. So with this added 24-inch transmission main coming right by there, I don't know how much smarter that gets. Pretty slam dunk to me. It's just going through the calculations to make sure, if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone representing the applicant that wishes to come forward and address this particular subject matter? Please identify yourself for the record. No, it's not necessary for you to write in.
No,
we know who you
I'm
are.
Good. For the record, Chris Baker, Manhart Consulting, again, here on behalf of the applicant. The only two comments I would like to add are, again, as brought up in the previous item, the main contributing factors to the water usage on this site are the fixture units required for the bathrooms and the landscaping. If you'll note on the landscape plan that you saw previously, a good portion, I would say 50 to 60% of it is actually considered low maintenance landscaping, so it will require less water. We're using the existing trees. And then also we've accepted the condition of approval in the growth management permit application or staff report to utilize low water usage fixture units where possible. So, with those, we're doing the best we can to limit water usage.
I just have one question, sir.
Yes.
I understand that you've read the conditions of approval?
I have, sir.
And do you fully agree with those?
We do.
All right, sir, thank you. Any commission members have questions of Mr. Baker? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to invite any member of the public to come forward and provide any comments regarding this particular subject matter. Let it be noted on the record, there's no indication that anyone from the public wishes to address this subject matter. I'm ready for a motion.
I'll do it. With regards to GM-14-163, I move to approve GM-14-163, a request for growth management approval from Carson Tahoe Hospital, property owner Carson Tahoe Hospital, to allow for daily water usage above 7,500 gallons per day for a congregate care facility on property-zoned public community located at 1001 Mountain Street, 608 and 610 West Washington Street, APN 001-201-15-16-26 and -27, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval outlined in the staff report.
I have a motion for approval by Mr. Castro. Do I have a second?
Second that.
I have a second by Mr. Steele. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any nays? It's unanimous and the motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the Growth Management Commission.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the Growth Management Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. And we'll also reconvene the Planning Commission. Mr. Plemmel.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to staff director's report. I just wanted to note that a couple items that were previously before the Planning Commission that went to the Board of Supervisors earlier in January. First of all, the Langston property, the old Hot Springs Road property that we had a master plan amendment and zoning map amendment, changing that to general industrial. That was approved by the Board of Supervisors with no issues on that. And also of interest, not necessarily a direct application that went to the Planning Commission, but of interest relating to the Herman Bauer property on Ann Street between Minnesota and Division Street. There was as you know, you reviewed the special use permit for the use of 2 fourplexes, so for the multifamily use, and that was approved and appealed. They then went to the and that was appealed and upheld at the Board of Supervisors. They then went to the Historic Resource Commission to modify their older application, and they actually got denied by the Historic Resource Commission and then appealed to the Board of Supervisors. So worth just a little bit of discussion. So the Historic Resource Commission does a great job protecting our historic resources and doing what they do. In this case, they made a motion to deny it, and the reasons for denying it were really based on the density and the use for that area, which is more in the purview of which is actually the purview of the Planning Commission in the land use. So actually, the Board of Supervisors overturned the Historic Resource Commission decision and approved the project. So that should be moving forward, and I know Susan's been having discussion with them, with the owner, trying to move that project forward. In terms of next month and next month's items, we as mentioned earlier, we have a special use permit coming for a second dispensary for the applicant that was here tonight for organics. They have a proposed dispensary on Clearview Drive on South Carson Street. And then we also have a 1-year review of a special use permit for the Carson Street Shopping Center, also known as the Evergreen Jeans Center, with the landscape and plants for outside display. 1-year review for that. Anything else you got to report? Okay, that concludes our report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Plemmel.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
There was, I believe it's 3 marijuana dispensaries that came before this commission back in, I think it was October. Do you have a current status of those?
So we know for certain that 2 of the 3 did not receive state licenses. We do not know about the 3rd.
Thank you, Ms. Pansky. Bring it back to the commission for any further comments.
I would like to apologize to the staff and to my fellow commissioners for the December 17th meeting. I got here at 10 minutes of 5 and ran into the custodian, and in reading I had studied all the information, but I had not picked up it was a 1 o'clock meeting, and I apologize for that.
Did you hurt him?
No, I just came, I said, where is it? And I looked at my minutes, and it said, oh, it's a 1 o'clock meeting. So
If I may.
Sorry about that.
If I may.
Mr. Castro.
Also apologize for that date. The date I was prepared for, but at 5 o'clock, not 1 o'clock. So I apologize as well. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I'm glad that we have it in a record to hear such verbatim information from two wonderful planners.
Yeah, we read the information, but we can't tell time, I guess, so.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there any other discussion or comments by any of the commission members, or is there anything else you'd like to see on future agendas? Okay. And I'd like to address the public, just in case this gentleman in the front row would decide that he would like to step forward and provide a signature and address this particular commission. But the public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission and the Growth Management Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Let it be noted on the record that we do have a member of staff, though, I think, that wants to make a comment.
I didn't see any public, so I thought I'd just clarify one thing. In regards to that last water discussion, I didn't want it to make it sound like, it's good, we got all the water in the world. We do have a lot of water, and we're a lot better shape than we were in the 90s when that was in place. So it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep an eye on it or be smart with it, but the 20,000 gallons a day isn't really much of a concern. So just let me clarify that.
And to that, nobody's really addressed the fact that the Carson Tahoe Hospital is no longer a hospital. And the change in that facility from what it was to what it is most probably reduced the amount of water usage in that same area.
Yeah, yep.
Well, thank you very much for your input. I appreciate your apology. And would you be so kind as to provide a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion for adjournment since
Do
I'm
we have
here.
a second, Mr. Castro?
Second.
A second by Mr. Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.